All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about a peptide that's making some serious waves, and for good reason. Some are even calling it the master switch for your body's entire hormone system. It's called Kisspeptin, and its role as a central regulator is pretty incredible.
And just a quick heads up, this explainer is brought to you by our friends at infinitypeptide.com.
So let me ask you this. What if you could find a single peptide that could basically restart your body's entire hormone factory? I'm not talking about a temporary fix or some kind of patch. I mean a signal that goes straight to the top, to the big boss, and gets the whole assembly line running again. Well, that's the big idea behind Kisspeptin. Okay, here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll cover what this master switch actually is. Then, we're going to peek under the hood at something called the HPG axis. After that, we'll talk about its potential, look at how people are using it, and finally, we'll give you the final verdict. Simple as that.
All right, section 1, the master switch. So let's get right to it. What in the world is this molecule that has everyone talking?
So, at its heart, Kisspeptin is what's called a neuropeptide hormone. You can just think of it like a messenger molecule that works in your brain. You know, it earned the nickname the puberty peptide because it's famous for getting that whole process started. But here's the thing. Its job doesn't end when you're a teenager. Nope. It's the central regulator for our reproductive hormones for our entire lives.
And here's a little piece of trivia for you. It's actually pretty funny. Ever wonder where a name like Kisspeptin comes from? Well, it was first discovered in a town, you might have heard of it, Hershey, Pennsylvania. Yep, that Hershey. And believe it or not, the scientists named it after Hershey's Kisses. You can't make this stuff up.
Okay, so we know what it is, but the big question is, how does this so-called master switch actually work? To really get it, we've got to take a look inside the body's engine room. It's a complex system known as the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, or, HPG axis for short. Let's make it easy.
Okay, picture a line of dominoes. Kisspeptin is the one that tips over first. It all begins in the hypothalamus, right in the brain, where Kisspeptin gives it a little nudge. This triggers the release of something called GnRH. Now, GnRH travels to the pituitary gland and tells it, hey, release LH and FSH. And then those two hormones, LH and FSH, they're the ones that travel down to the gonads and give the final order, make testosterone and support fertility. See? It's a whole cascade, and it all comes back to that very first push from Kisspeptin. So why should you care about that whole domino effect? Well, it's because by starting everything from the very, very top, Kisspeptin has the potential to unlock two huge things that a lot of people are interested in, testosterone and fertility.
Okay, now I have to be really clear here. What we're talking about is anecdotal evidence. This isn't from massive clinical trials, yet. But what users are reporting is pretty eye-opening. We're seeing reports of total testosterone boosts of around 20%, and some people are even claiming increases as high as 50%. The jump in free testosterone seems a bit more moderate, but hey, if you're starting from a low baseline, those are absolutely game-changing numbers. And this is where we get to a really key difference, a major one, between Kisspeptin and something you might be more familiar with, like HCG. See, HCG works downstream. It kind of just jumps into the middle of the process and mimics LH. But Kisspeptin, it works upstream. It goes right to the very beginning and kicks off the entire natural cascade. We're talking GnRH, LH, and FSH. That's why people call it a top-of-the-tree solution. It's a much more complete signal.
And because it has this full spectrum action, it's a huge deal in fertility research. Think about it. By stimulating both LH and FSH, it can help with critical functions for both men and women. We're talking about things like sperm production in men and ovulation in women. It covers all the bases.
Okay, so if this system is so darn important, what can you actually do about it? How do you support it? Well, the information points to two main strategies. First, optimizing it naturally, and second, for some people, looking into direct supplementation. So let's check out the blueprint for both. Now, before we even think about supplements, it is absolutely essential to get this. Your body already has powerful, built-in ways to regulate Kisspeptin all on its own. This whole system is hardwired to your energy balance and your internal clock, your circadian rhythm. So things like keeping your body fat in a healthy range, getting some sun first thing in the morning, keeping your sleep on point, managing stress, these aren't just nice-to-haves. They're the absolute foundation for keeping that master switch functioning the way it's supposed to.
Now, for those who are looking into supplementation, the reported protocols really depend on the goal. It's not one size fits all. For example, someone on TRT might be using a small maintenance dose, say twice a week. A bodybuilder in the middle of a cycle might be using a much higher dose, maybe even once or twice a day. And then for fertility, some reports suggest taking a dose about half an hour to an hour before intercourse, trying to perfectly time that spike in LH and FSH.
All right, it's time to put it all on the table. Let's get to the final verdict. As with any tool this powerful, you've got to be smart and look at both sides, the pros and the cons. Okay, on the pro side, the arguments are pretty strong. It kicks off the entire hormone loop from square one. It's beneficial for both male and female biology, and it really could be a better alternative to HCG in the future. But you have to look at the cons, and they demand respect. This is a pretty new peptide, folks. We don't have a lot of long-term research. And let's be blunt, if you use it wrong, it has the potential to mess with your hormone balance. Plus, if you're not doing lab work, you're basically just guessing. You're flying blind. So that really leaves us with the million-dollar question, doesn't it? Is Kisspeptin the actual future of hormone therapy? A smarter, more complete way to manage our own biology? Or is it just a really powerful new tool that we're only just starting to figure out, one that still has hidden risks and details we need to uncover? I'll leave you with that to think about. And that's our deep dive into Kisspeptin. Once again, this explainer was brought to you by infinitypeptides.com. Thanks for tuning in.